This is Lee from the Law School Toolbox and the Bar Exam Toolbox.
Welcome back. Today we are welcoming Jennifer Berry, a member of the Law School Toolbox and Bar Exam Toolbox team, who is sharing some insights from her time as a bar exam grader. I feel like that's such an elusive title that people know you exist, but they have no idea who you are.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So to get things kicked off, could you share a little bit more about yourself, your background, and how on earth did you become a bar grader?
Sure. So I've been practicing for almost 20 years now. Back when I first passed the bar, I got my dream job working for the California legislature. That was in 2005. But as a state employee, especially a state employee that is a brand new attorney, I just did not make very much money. And was also a single mom at that time, and definitely was thinking, I've got to figure out a way to supplement this. And so I started looking and came across a listing, I think on like Indeed.com or something like that. And thought, well, I think I could do that. And we applied for it. And the process for the application is pretty simple. I don't think it's even changed. I was looking at it a while back, and it doesn't even like the application's very different now from 2005. So I applied for the July 2006 administration, and I was selected as an apprentice grader for the professional responsibility panel for that test cycle. And that typically means that you wouldn't grade any exams. You would just sort of be trained. Do all of the things that a grader has to do to prep to be able to grade exams, but you actually wouldn't get any exams in your possession. But as it so happened, I did end up grading that cycle. We needed more graders than were officially chosen. And so I started. And from there on, I pretty much graded for, I forget how many cycles now. It was a lot though. It was 11 years, and there were only a couple of cycles that I didn't actually grade during because of some grades or vacation. Things
That means you probably graded my bar exam. And I'm sure you put a big sparkling star on the top for how great of a job I did.
Amazing job.
Amazing job. So, you graded for the California bar, and I know that individual jurisdictions have slightly different processes of how people, go through their grading process. But can you share a little bit about kind of the typical bar grading process in California? I will say when I started learning about this, I was surprised that it was a pretty big process, like a much bigger process than I think most people appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty intense. And that's part of why I ended up stopping grading, because it was so intense and time intensive for me as my son got older. I just couldn't continue to spend that much time in the Bay Area, which was physically required. So when you're first assigned to a panel, they'll, I think it's within usually a couple of days of the bar being complete. Everybody who has accommodations and everything have finished, and then they send out the packet to you as the grader to get your question, and you're required to do a full researched answer. So I would spend my time, I don't remember exactly how long I had to do an answer like that, but I spent a significant amount of time doing full, law school level research to answer the question with treat sites and statute sites and everything. And everybody would send that to all the other graders in the same day. So everybody would get everybody's answers, and then you were expected to read them and have a good sense of what should be expected of the students taking the exam. And you would meet a couple weeks or so later in the Bay Area as a group, usually with at a hotel. So there's a lot of graders. So we'd have a ton of different rooms with each question assigned, and the panels were about 12 to 15 people with a leader, and then sometimes somebody from the committee itself would be there to observe. And you would spend the entire day going through both the questions, both the answers that were submitted, the proposed answer that the leader would have come up with at that point, and everybody would come to an agreement about what should be in the exam answers and what points should be allocated to each thing. And then in the afternoon, you would grade a handful of essays independently. In the morning, you also graded essays together to come to an agreement of, okay, this is a 55, the 75. In the afternoon, you'd all grade them independently. And then those scores would be submitted and a whole statistical analysis would be done. And you come back the following weekend, same setup. And basically you would go through in the morning who was the outlier. So when you didn't want to be an outlier, you wanted to stay in that sort of middle of the bell curve place, but there was always people on the outside on one or two questions, um, who would grade either too high or too low. So be like, sort of told you need to adjust your expectations, or you need to be harsher, depending on where you were on that bell curve, right? And so that was the sort of process for the first couple of days. And the theoretical result of that should be that you would, everybody should walk out of that room knowing exactly what a 55. So if I got an exam, and then everybody else got the same exam, we'd all grade within like 5 of each other on either side. So basically a 10. And usually after that one, you'd start the grading right away. They would provide you boxes of exams. Return period, and then you return again a few weeks into it, maybe like a month into it, and just verify that you all are still on the same page. So you would grade exams again, and to make sure that, as the cycle progresses, nobody's going too high or too low, and so that we're all still agreeing on what we're seeing. That's the process for actually getting to the exam, and then you would actually have an exam. You would get a box of 100 exams, and you dive into that. And like I said, it was a staggered turn-in time period, so you kind of had to plan ahead and set aside. I think I usually set aside 4 or so hours for a box, and you just dive into the exams. I can talk about too, sort of what I looked at the exams, if that's something you want.
Yeah, I want to do that too. But I think this is a really important point. There are 2 interesting points that I want to call out for people. One is, at least in California, I think everybody thinks that there's some perfect model answer when they get those tests in the room, and there is no answer at that point. And that's pretty wild. And I can think a wild concept for people to sit with. And then I think the second thing is, I think it's very powerful because although I have not been a bar grader, I have taught and I have graded a stack of, 50, I taught bar prep classes. So, I got the stack of questions, and it is an interesting thing to sit and read 100 versions of the same answer over and over and over again. And when you're writing your answer, I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, that you are writing to a grader that has studied this question, but also is reading is spending 4 hours on a box of 100 questions, and you kind of want to write to that person. And I think that can be a helpful mindset for anyone in any jurisdiction to think about, is there is a lawyer somewhere who is going to be sitting with your box of essays, reading one after another, and you want to make their job as easy as possible. And that's, to me, there's something about crafting an answer for that audience that I think is really important for people to recognize.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that is interesting about the process is that the essays start to almost fall into like a handful of types of essays that you would see too. And so you obviously want your essay to see in one of the types of essays where I'm like, oh, I start this, I know this is going to be in that like 60 to 70 range for sure the moment I start reading it. And usually that would be the conclusion. So the goal is that you're writing an essay that I can read easily, and I don't have to fight to give you your points. And as a grader, I would fight to give people points through my process. But I don't know that everybody was willing to spend as much time doing that. So that's something to keep in mind, of you just want to make it easy for your grader.
If you enjoyed this video, please take a second to give us a like and leave a comment. And be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any future content. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us via the contact form at lawschooltoolbox.com. Thanks for watching.